Secretary Shanahan. I'm glad Moscow retains a large stockpile of non-strategic nuclear weapons and continues to modernize those as well as its strategic systems. China is also modernizing and expanding its nuclear forces. Both countries are challenging the free and open international order. We know that other unfriendly regimes and enemies of our country put our lives at risk by pursuing nuclear weapons. North Korea continues its illicit nuclear weapons program and missile capabilities. Iran retains the technological capability to develop a nuclear weapon within 1 year of deciding to do so. The potential threat of non-state actors getting their hands on a nuclear weapon remains at the front of all of our minds. Nuclear terrorism is still a major threat in this century, and one we must work to mitigate at every opportunity. The 2018 Nuclear Posture Review focuses on strengthening extended deterrence. The United States has formal extended deterrence commitments that assure European, Asian, and Pacific allies of our commitment to use nuclear force to protect them if necessary. The United States is committed to our allies under the U.S. nuclear umbrella. Our extended deterrence commitments are unwavering. We have the ability and will to fulfill them. Potential adversaries should not doubt our resolve. The United States will hold accountable any state or non-state actor that supports terrorist efforts to obtain or employ a nuclear weapon. The United States will only consider the use of nuclear weapons in extreme circumstances to defend the vital interests of the United States, its allies, and partners. The United States will not use or threaten to use nuclear weapons against non-nuclear weapons states that are party to the NPT and in compliance with their nuclear non-proliferation obligations. Effective nuclear non-proliferation and weapons control measures like the NPT support U.S. allied and partner security. These measures control the spread of nuclear materials and technology, place limits on the production, stockpiling, and deployment of nuclear weapons, decrease misperception and miscalculation, and help avoid destabilizing nuclear weapons competition. States will not resume nuclear explosive testing unless we find it necessary to ensure the stability and effectiveness of our nuclear arsenal. We call on all states possessing nuclear weapons to declare or to maintain a moratorium on nuclear testing. Going forward, we are also eager to increase transparency and predictability to avoid miscalculation among nuclear weapon states and other possessor states. That includes reestablishing the conditions necessary for greater trust with Russia and improved transparency with China as it expands and modernizes its nuclear forces. The 2018 NPR highlights the Trump administration's commitment to both the long-term goal of eliminating nuclear weapons and the requirement that the United States have modern, flexible, and resilient nuclear capabilities. Until nuclear weapons can be eliminated from the world, we must continue to ensure the security of our people and that of our allies and partners.
During a news conference in Mexico City, Tillerson warned Mexico to pay attention to Russian meddling in elections around the world. He said European counterparts had noticed that Russia had its fingerprints on a number of elections. Tillerson also suggested that the Venezuelan army could manage a peaceful transition from its president, Maduro. His comments have been condemned by the Venezuelan government. On the topic of the North American Free Trade Agreement, Tillerson defended Trump's threat to, quote-unquote, kill the agreement and to crack down on both legal and illegal immigration. Tillerson is also scheduled to visit Argentina, Colombia, Peru, and Jamaica in the next few days.
Yet another firestorm is raging in Washington, hours after President Trump declassified a memo alleging the Russia investigation was politically motivated from the start. The 4-page document, written by House Republicans, claims the FBI and Justice Department abused their powers to spy on a former Trump campaign advisor last year.
So it's clear that this is going to really escalate a conflict that we're seeing between the White House and the FBI and the Justice Department. And the White House has really been advocating for the release of this because the president has been looking for information that he believes could undermine or discredit Special Counsel Robert Mueller's investigation. This could be something that he points to.
The intelligence community says the memo is inaccurate and misleading, while Democrats have warned Trump against using it as a pretext to fire any more of the top officials overseeing the Russia probe.
It's a little bit of everything. Sure, it's a throwback to some of the Cold War, more explicit nuclear threats between the U.S. and Russia, and between the U.S. and other adversaries, namely China and North Korea. But it's also a continuation of U.S. nuclear policy from past decades. This is not that much different than what President Obama had in his nuclear posture review in 2010. This is more aggressive. It does lower the threshold for possible nuclear weapons use, and it calls for additional unnecessary types of nuclear weapons. But in general, this is much of this is the status quo.
You asked about Russian interference in Mexican elections. All I could say to you is we know that Russia has fingerprints in a number of elections around the world. We hear this from our European counterparts as well. My advice would be to Mexico would be pay attention to what's happening.
Si existe de parte de Estados Unidos alguna intención para llevar a cabo una ofensiva militar en contra del régimen de Nicolás Maduro y si esta acción sería respaldada por México y por Canadá.
Turning elsewhere in the hemisphere, we shared our concerns for the humanitarian crisis that has unfolded in Venezuela. We all urge the Maduro regime to return to free, open, credible, democratic elections and to allow the Venezuelans a voice in their government. Our three countries will work with all members of the Lima Group to assist the Venezuelan people during this time of crisis. I also expressed to Foreign Minister Freeland and Foreign Secretary Videgaray how strongly I support Peru's ambitious anti-corruption agenda for the Summit of the Americas later this spring. We hope leaders throughout the hemisphere will make concrete commitments to combat corruption, strengthen the rule of law, and support economic growth and job creation. As challenges become more complex, North America and our three countries will continue to work together to find solutions. That makes meetings like we've had today extremely valuable, and it was certainly useful to me, and I appreciated the opportunity to meet with my counterparts. And thank you again for hosting, Luis.
Feel the anger of Turkey. We will break the arms and legs of any officers, of the Prime Minister, or of any minister who dares to step onto Ymir in the Aegean.
Unspeakable statements like these are alien to European political culture. We have said this before, each should know their place. Additionally, we would like to remind him that the legal status of the Aegean is clear and guaranteed by international law.
Turkey and Greece have a past of military conflict. I mean, in the 70s they were even at war at some point. It's not a surprise that these two NATO member states are in such a situation. For NATO it won't make that much of a difference. Of course, the other countries are very worried that this might get out of hand. You know, of course they do not like two NATO members at war. But NATO has always survived these kind of skirmishes, especially between Greece and Turkey. We should not forget that all rhetoric aside, NATO was never about democracy and human rights. I mean, when NATO was founded, Greece was a military dictatorship and Turkey was a military dictatorship. That did not impede their NATO membership. So I think, on the whole, things will go on as usual. Just the only thing that we have to take care of is that this does not get out of hand. This can always happen, of course.
All right, good afternoon. The Secretary General will make some opening remarks and then we'll have time for...
At the Congress that took place in Sochi, we are launching a new helpline for staff within the Secretariat to seek confidential... The UN's presence in Sochi was based on a common understanding between the United Nations and the Russian Federation on the nature and outcome of the meeting and its contribution to the Geneva process. I want to express my appreciation for the way Foreign Minister Lavrov and the Russian Federation engaged with the United Nations. The Congress concluded with a statement fully in line with that common understanding. In accordance with Security Council Resolution 22, my special envoy will now draw on the Sochi outcome to meet our shared goal, full implementation of Security Council Resolution 2254 and the Geneva Communiqué. And he will also work for the talks to address the other areas determined by Resolution 2254. Third, the Congress made it clear we must never forget that progress towards a political settlement needs to be accompanied by progress on the ground. Yet, in the last 2 months, not a single convoy of life-saving relief has reached the besieged area. No medical supplies, no food. Humanitarian aid is not getting in. And people suffering dire health conditions are not getting out. We are seeing disturbing new reports about the possible use of chemical weapons. Millions of Syrians have lost everything. I call on the government and opposition delegations and all states with influence to cooperate with my special envoy. We must ensure that the UN-led process moves ahead in Geneva credibly and seriously. And I appeal for humanitarian access, strict respect for international humanitarian law, and in particular, the protection of civilians. We don't have a moment to lose.
On the other hand, another element was added at the certain time, encouraged by the steps that were governments, the private sector,